things from people, friends, and people in the community that aren't necessarily accurate, and they're not necessarily true. There are business brokers out there who are brokers. They go look for somebody to buy your business for a fee. But they won't negotiate the documents for you. They're not qualified to negotiate the documents for you. They're not qualified to do the economic analysis that's necessary at various levels, one of which is to determine what your company is worth in the marketplace at the present time. And that's why you need a knowledgeable business accountant. Once you have an attorney and an accountant on your team, then they will look and do due diligence internally on the business that's being sold. They will look at the legal documents for the business. They will look at the financial documents, the types of clients and customers that this particular business has, and then they will make recommendations as to how to proceed, to the seller. I recently had a potential client come and interview me because they didn't have a lawyer. They've been running an apparel business in downtown Los Angeles for several years, and they've built it up where they have several $1 million in sales. The problem is that they thought, as many do, that the company was worth more than it is really worth in today's marketplace. And as a result, when we analyzed the numbers for them, both their CFO, their accountant, their investment advisor, and myself, we showed them that after paying capital gains tax, they wouldn't have as much money available to yield investment income for their retirement years. And they said, well, we'll have to think about it, and we'll see if we can build up the sales to a point where it makes sense to sell. That's the value added that the lawyer and accountant can bring to the table. They can show a seller that he's not ready to sell yet, or he's going to be selling at a price that is below their expectations.
So how do you cut down on when you do the deal, on the liabilities that are maybe involved? I mean, there may be some things that even the seller might not even know, or some of those issues. Well, how can a seller protect himself or herself and diminish some of the liabilities that may be facing them over a period of time?
One is to run a clean business and not fool around with things that you shouldn't.
You can't
fool
hide
around.
anything.
Well, the problem is that in the customary documentation, which is generally drafted by the buyer's attorney, if the buyer's attorney knows what he or she is doing, they'll put what we call representations and warranties in the contract to protect the buyer. They're basically information-seeking devices. There'll be statements like, the seller owns all the shares of the company and they're unencumbered. There's no litigation. They've paid their taxes regularly. Their accounts payable are this amount. Their receivables are that amount. And if they are not telling the truth, there are consequences, both legal and monetary, that are built into the sale agreement.
And how do you protect yourself? Well, how does the buyer protect himself from any kinds of potential problems that may arise after the sale?
Well, let's go back to protecting the seller first. Okay. The seller protects himself by cleaning up his company before he puts it on the market. Right. That's the job of his accountant and his lawyer, as I mentioned earlier, to do the internal due diligence, to try and find all the snakes that are hidden under the rocks. And if there are any problems, we would deal with them before we bring the company to market. And we try and clean them up if they can be cleaned up. Otherwise, there are things which you normally disclose, and the buyer either accepts them or doesn't buy the company. There's no company that can be sold with a totally clean slate. The business is just not that simple, no matter what type of company you have.